one thing that I find fascinating between everybody in the world, or at least in my group of like 5 friends, is that we all have a dream from our childhood that we vividly remember. For me, one of the earliest memories that I have, like ever, was a dream that I experienced when I was sick as a kid. Dreams that I have when I'm sick are often memorable, not because they left some metaphorical, foreshadowy impact on me, but because they don't make any sense at all. Which brings me to another fascinating thing that most people outside of my group of like 5 friends has experienced. A fever dream. Wikipedia, a website that I love sourcing despite college professors, defines a fever dream as a particularly intense or confusing dream brought on by a fever. Like most dreams, they're aesthetically put together, but in a nonsensical way where you might encounter seemingly random events or people that you haven't talked to in years. But in a fever dream, it's turned up to 11, and the things that you encounter might be a little bit more off-putting than normal. A great example of this is a website called This Person Does Not Exist. This website uses an AI to generate a face every time you refresh the page, giving you a lifelike representation of a fake person who doesn't exist, kind of like something you might find in your own dreams. However, if you refresh the page enough, you'll find weird, creepy errors made by the AI that distort or otherwise destroy the image that it was trying to create. In a way, it's almost like our brains do the same thing. When you're sick, your brain kind of overheats and makes small mistakes in your dreams that can be kind of creepy. No, seriously, this is what researchers actually think cause weird dreams when you have a fever. The concept of fever dreams and their aesthetic as an influence in media has been a thing for a very long time, and whether or not they're credited as an inspiration in a lot of movies or books that you might find that are fever dream-ish, it's hard to deny that this theme works best in an interactive medium, like video games. And I think I found one of the best examples that you could possibly give for a topic like this. Like a fever dream, Cruelty Squad is unlike anything I have ever seen before. From the very beginning of the game, you're greeted with a harsh cutscene that makes it seem more like an intricate computer virus than a video game that you would spend money on. The user interface is unfriendly to the point where navigating to the settings and starting the game is a challenge in itself. The opening music sounds like something that was whipped up in a few minutes on a trial version of FL Studio, and everything you see is just so incredibly gross. And it's absolutely brilliant. Aesthetically, it all comes together. It all fits, but in such a way that it's incredibly entertaining and immediately unsettling. One of the first things that you'll notice when you see this game in action is that it's incredibly cluttered. The first thing that came into my mind when I saw this game was one of those memes where somebody takes the UI from like every single game and puts it together into one super confusing image. There's so much going on here, like the meaty border that can change depending on certain factors in the game, the huge bubbling life icon with the placeholder looking text below it, and the creepy face in between the amount of ammo in your gun and the amount of ammo you have remaining, and the reloading slider that appears in the middle of your screen when you want to reload your weapon. It's insane. Speaking of reloading, the controls fit right into this unsettling territory too. In a normal FPS or even in a light immersive simulator like Cruelty Squad, you would walk with WASD, cycle through your weapons with like the numbers or your mouse's scroll wheel, jump with spacebar and reload with R, interact with stuff maybe with like F and crouch with C, maybe access a few menus here and there, but it's not overtly complicated. But just for comparison's sake, in Cruelty Squad, you walk with WASD, you jump with space, you switch weapons with C, or you can use the number pad, you zoom in with shift, you crouch with X, you interact with things with R, you do a melee attack with F, you lean to the left or right with Q and E, you throw your weapon, like physically throw your weapon with G, your character can just die by pressing K, you access the stock market, which I'll get to that in a second, with tab, you shoot with the left mouse button, and you reload your weapon by holding down the right mouse button and moving the mouse down, kind of like a small reloading minigame. All of this can of course be adjusted to your liking, but what an insane default control layout that works so good for some reason. Behind Cruelty Squad's confusing, unsettling, seemingly zero-effort aesthetics is an incredibly well-thought-out shooter with tight gameplay, a ton of little secrets, and some really creative mechanics that you have never seen the likes of before. One great example of this is how you earn currency in the game. Like a lot of other games, Cruelty Squad has purchasable upgrades for your character. When you beat a level, you get some money, but your main source of income is going to be from the in-game stock market. There's 3 indexes, one for normal corporate stocks that you can buy and sell, one one for body parts that you can pick up from the enemies that you shoot in game, and one last one for fish that you can get through a fishing minigame in any of the levels with water. The stocks continually fluctuate as you play the game, so if you're in the middle of a level and you want to check if it's a good time to buy some kidneys, you can whenever you want to. It's a seemingly random yet well thought out system that fits perfectly into the game's story. If you can figure out what the story is, seriously, you're not playing this one for the story. In fact, most Fever Dream-ish games that I can think of don't really focus on the story as much as they do their aesthetics and, the things that you're seeing. But there is one exception that I can think of. Omori is a great example of a game that only leans into the Fever Dream aesthetic when it feels necessary. It's a full-length, turn-based RPG with a concise story and script, half of which takes place in a dreamlike world. At times, it's methodical and well thought out with its environments, with each dungeon having a very specific theme. But at one very memorable point in the game, Omori reaches this perfect mixture of already established characters being put in very confusing and brutal situations that nails this Fever Dream feeling perfectly, to the point where I would say that some instances of this game are way more emotional and intense than the slaughterhouse that is Cruelty Squad. In fact, Omori is probably one of the only games that has made me feel a stomach-curdling immediate feel of regret, like I didn't know what to do with this part. I thought that's what you were supposed to do, I'm so sorry. Yume Nikki is a cult classic freeware game where you literally explore the dreams of a girl named Monotsuki. The gameplay is pretty much going to bed, exploring the dreams of this girl and looking for items and then waking up. The game has an end goal of finding all these little effects that change your character, but its gameplay is almost entirely exploring these intensely creepy landscapes. You can speculate all you want about Yume Nikki's story, but its seemingly random environments do a really great job of making the player uncomfortable. For example, there's an area in the game with a neon color scheme that contrasts really well with this static black background. Then, connected to this same area is an elevator which leads you to a mall that looks vastly different from the area you were at before. Its purple walls and weird people walking around are creepy as hell, but when compared to the area you were at before, it's kind of calming. There's also a chance that the mall's rooftop will be open, where you can find one of the most chill parts of the entire game. A lot of people like Yume Nikki, myself included, and I think it's because it does a great job of contrasting creepy, anxiety-inducing areas with calming, sometimes nostalgic areas, which, as a reoccurring part of the gameplay, keeps me interested. But not all fever dreams have an end goal. They can be without purpose, kind of like LSD Dream Emulator, another game where the setting is directly inside of a dream. This one takes a first-person point of view, and whenever you run into something, it teleports you to a new, trippy, weird area, which, in my opinion, the PS1 graphics just intensify anything that's creepy in a video game. It's trippy, and it's probably one of the most unique experiences that you can get out of a PS1 game. This game, like Yume Nikki, is a cult classic, and it was initially popular due to its extreme rarity and niche appeal, which subsequently followed an influx of YouTubers playing it because of how, avant-garde it is. As a piece of art, it's pretty good. If you throw on some headphones and explore for a bit, or just indulge in how insanely weird it is with some friends, it's a good time. But as a game, LSD kind of blows. I mean, yeah, exploring its worlds can be interesting, but every time I play it, I just get so annoyed with the sound of your character walking. Also, there really isn't much gameplay to be had here, and because of the random nature of the game, some first-time players might run into one of the many less interesting parts of the game. One thing that I'm confident most games need is a goal. Whether it be a power-up to buy, a story to follow, or a character to level, it needs something to give that player the dopamine rush, And that something doesn't necessarily have to be immediately presented to the player. I mean, the goal of Yume Nikki isn't very clear, but finding the new effects to play around with is what kept me playing. Some might argue that finding new environments in LSD is sort of a soft goal, but all it makes me want to do is play something else. I guess this makes a lot more sense considering that the game's creator, Osamu Sato, is not a fan of video games, and instead used the PlayStation as a means to create art. Very sophisticated, Osamu Sato. What, do you want a fucking cheese platter with your PS1? What? Why did I write that? Please don't hate me for not liking LSD. But don't get me wrong, I do love games where I get to explore. You know, maybe something that would be equally as weird and a little bit more entertaining would be Crypt Worlds, a freeware explore the place game that I haven't played in years, and I won't even try to explain. I mean, realistically, if you're looking for fun, fever dreamish games, you could probably just go on Game Jolt and find like at least 5 cool indie games in just a few minutes, but they're mostly leaning more on the creepy side of the fever dream. You'll be pressed to find anything, like this vapor wavy adventure game puts you inside of a virtual online world where your reputation is based on the ads that you like, the pictures that you take, and the things that you buy in quick succession. It's like somebody took LSD Dream Emulator and then mixed it with Floral Shop or really anything vapor wavy. As you explore this vast island, you end up gaining a variety of tools that can help you on your journey to finding the admin, like a thumbs up that you can use to like ads and talk to people, a stopwatch that can teleport you to the last place you were at, and a katana which can be used to slash away viruses in your path. The game's bright neon colors make it seem like just a fun satire on capitalistic culture, but underneath its cool and calm aesthetic, you can tell that there's something more going on here. Its incredibly engaging environments carry it, but it does a great job of alluding to some dark mystery going on in the game world, which in my opinion is the bread and butter of a fever dream game. Almost every game I've talked about here gets its fever dream qualities, whether it be the familiar or unsettling part of a fever dream from its art style and environments. But what really tends to keep me playing these types of games is the mystery. For Cruelty Squad, it's the insane amount of hidden items and collectibles. For Omori, initially, it's the mystery of what happened to Basil. For Yume Nikki, it's the effects that you find throughout the game, and even for LSD Dream Emulator, you can find a little incentive to play it in its dream chart. So if you're ever looking for a really good fever dream game to play, be sure to look out for these qualities. And if you're making a game that inspires some fever dream qualities, make sure you save some room for a little bit of mystery.